The Su-57M Moloch is one of those aircraft that immediately sparks both fascination and controversy. Whenever Russia unveils a new piece of military hardware, especially in the realm of fifth-generation fighters, it draws global attention, and the Su-57M Moloch is no exception. It is presented as the evolution of the original Su-57 platform, but with an array of modifications, upgrades, and conceptual changes that aim to push it further into the modern battlefield environment. To really understand what makes the Moloch interesting, you need to look at both the history of the Su-57 project and the mythology that Russia attaches to its weapons systems, and then place it within the broader context of air power in the 21st century. The original Su-57, known by NATO as the Felon, was Russia's answer to the American F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning II. It was intended to be stealthy, highly maneuverable, and versatile, capable of engaging both aerial and ground targets with advanced avionics and sensor fusion. But the project suffered from repeated delays, cost overruns, and a lack of mass production. Only a handful of operational Su-57s exist today, and their combat use has been minimal, largely limited to testing in Syria and possibly in Ukraine under very controlled conditions. With that context, the announcement of the Su-57M Moloch raised eyebrows. Why Moloch? Why now? And what does it represent in terms of Russia's aerospace ambitions? The name itself is striking. Moloch is a mythic figure associated with fire, destruction, and sacrifice. By naming a stealth fighter after this demon, Russian designers and propagandists are clearly trying to send a psychological message. They want the Moloch to be seen as a terrifying weapon, a destroyer that dominates the skies with fiery power. This symbolic layer matters in Russian military culture, where names are often chosen not just for their practical use but for the aura they carry. Tanks are named after storms, predators, or mythological beings. Planes and missiles often carry evocative titles that suggest invincibility or doom. So the Su-57M Moloch isn't just an upgrade, it's a branding exercise, tying the machine to a legendary image of fire and fear. But beneath the symbolism, there are the technical aspects. Reports suggest that the Su-57M incorporates the much-awaited second-stage engine, sometimes referred to as Izdeliye 30. This engine is supposed to give the aircraft supercruise capability, meaning it can fly at supersonic speeds without afterburners, significantly improving fuel efficiency and endurance. The thrust-to-weight ratio would increase, and combined with the Su-57's already impressive thrust vectoring nozzles, the maneuverability would be formidable. The Russians have always emphasized dogfighting capabilities, believing that close-range agility is still relevant even in an era dominated by beyond-visual-range missiles. The Moloch seems designed to maintain that philosophy while addressing earlier shortcomings in speed and range. In terms of stealth, the Su-57 has often been criticized for not being as stealthy as its Western counterparts. Its radar cross-section is reduced compared to older fighters, but analysts argue that it doesn't match the low observable levels of the F-22 or F-35. The Moloch reportedly introduces refinements in radar-absorbing coatings and structural shaping, attempting to close that gap. However, stealth is about more than surface treatments, it's about the entire design philosophy, from internal weapons base to infrared signature management. While the Su-57M may improve in these areas, it's unlikely to erase the fundamental design differences that give Western fighters an edge in radar invisibility. Still, Russia tends to balance this with heavy emphasis on electronic warfare systems. The Moloch is expected to carry advanced jamming suites and sensor decoys, essentially making itself harder to track not only through physical stealth but also through electronic deception. Avionics and cockpit systems are another area of upgrade. One of the major criticisms of earlier Russian fighters has been their lag in sensor fusion and pilot interface compared to Western aircraft. The F-35, for example, is essentially a flying sensor node that integrates data from multiple sources into a single, intuitive display. The Su-57M is supposed to advance in this direction, giving pilots more real-time situational awareness and integrating both onboard and offboard sensor data. Russia has been experimenting with artificial intelligence-assisted systems to reduce pilot workload and improve reaction time. If these systems function as intended, the Moloch could represent a leap forward in Russian cockpit design, bridging a gap that has long existed between East and West. Weapons integration is another critical aspect. The Su-57 platform was always envisioned as a multi-role fighter, capable of carrying air-to-air, air-to-ground, and anti-ship munitions. The Moloch continues this philosophy but emphasizes new long-range missiles, including advanced variants of the R-77 and R-37 series. The R-37M, in particular, is already known as one of the world's longest-range air-to-air missiles, capable of striking targets over 300 kilometers away. With the Moloch, Russia is likely to push even further, creating a standoff capability that allows it to challenge AWACS, tankers, and other high-value assets without closing in. In addition, hypersonic missile integration has been rumored, though not confirmed. If the Su-57M can actually carry and deploy hypersonic air-to-air or air-to-surface weapons, that would be a significant step, making it a unique threat profile compared to anything currently in Western service. Another feature often mentioned is the concept of manned-unmanned teaming. The Su-57 has been linked to the Okhotnik B heavy drone, a stealthy unmanned combat aerial vehicle that Russia has been developing. The idea is that the Moloch could act as a command aircraft, directing a small fleet of drones in combat operations. This would allow it to extend its sensor reach, deliver additional firepower, and reduce risks to the manned aircraft. Western militaries are also pursuing similar concepts, but if the Moloch can operationalize this in the near term, it could give Russia a flexible tool for both offensive and defensive operations. But every claim must be balanced by reality. Russia's defense industry is under enormous strain. Sanctions, supply chain issues, and the costs of ongoing conflicts mean that production capacity is limited. It is one thing to announce an advanced fighter and show prototypes at air shows, and quite another to field hundreds of them in operational squadrons. The Su-57 program itself has struggled with this for years, with only a handful of airframes actually delivered. The Moloch may therefore represent more of a technological demonstrator or propaganda tool than a mass-produced weapon of war, at least in the short term. For Western analysts, this raises the question, is the Moloch a real game changer, or just an evolution designed to save face and keep Russia in the conversation about fifth-generation fighters? Looking at performance on the battlefield, it's worth asking how an aircraft like the Moloch would fare against Western opponents. Against an F-22 Raptor, the edge would likely remain with the American jet in terms of stealth and perhaps first-shot first-kill capability. Against the F-35, the Moloch might have better maneuverability and potentially longer-range missiles, but the F-35's networking and sensor integration would provide significant advantages. Against fourth-generation fighters, however, the Moloch would likely dominate. Its stealth, even if imperfect, combined with advanced missiles and electronic warfare, would give it a decisive edge over aircraft like the F-15, F-16, Eurofighter, or Rafale in most scenarios. The question is not whether it is dangerous, it certainly is, but whether it can achieve parity with the very top-tier Western fifth-generation jets. From a strategic perspective, the Su-57M Moloch represents Russia's determination to stay relevant in the aerospace arms race. Air superiority is a cornerstone of modern warfare, and without advanced fighters, a nation risks ceding control of the skies. By developing the Moloch, Russia signals to both domestic and international audiences that it is not falling behind, that it can still produce world-class technology despite economic and political pressures. Whether that signal is accurate or exaggerated depends on how the aircraft performs in real-world conditions, which remains largely untested. The mythology around the name Moloch is also important to consider. In ancient traditions, Moloch was associated with fire, war, and sacrifice, sometimes linked to rituals that demanded terrible costs. In a sense, naming the aircraft this way could be interpreted as both a projection of destructive power and a subtle acknowledgement of the sacrifices involved in developing and fielding such a system. For Russia, locked in geopolitical struggles and economic hardships, the Moloch might symbolize both strength and the high price of maintaining great power status. In conclusion, the Su-57M Moloch is a fascinating aircraft. It embodies the strengths and weaknesses of Russian aerospace philosophy, emphasis on maneuverability, heavy firepower, and electronic warfare, combined with struggles in mass production, stealth optimization, and industrial scaling. It may not be the ultimate air dominance fighter that Russia wants it to be, but it certainly represents a credible, dangerous platform that no adversary can ignore. If deployed in sufficient numbers, it could reshape regional air balances and complicate NATO's strategic planning. If not, it may remain more of a symbolic weapon, a fiery demon in name and image, but limited in flesh and steel. Only time, and the realities of combat, will reveal whether the Moloch is truly the beast it is named after, or whether it will remain more myth than reality.